Well, for more on this issue, let's bring in Dr. Kjersti Aagaard. She's a maternal-fetal medicine specialist at Texas Children's Pavilion for Women in Houston. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rachelle, for having me. It's my pleasure.
So obviously a lot of information out there, and obviously it can be quite a scary time when you're pregnant. So when it comes to the COVID risks for expectant mothers, their immunity levels and the infection rates, what do we know so far?
So it's a really great question, and I like to break it down with my patients two ways. One is, instead of thinking about this as having to weigh the benefits of the vaccine versus risks, I like to think about it as weighing the benefits of the vaccine versus the unknowns, remembering that just because we don't have data doesn't mean harm.
Well, and that's interesting because we did see some changes in the messaging from the beginning from the WHO. So at this point in time, how clear and consistent is the messaging on whether you should take it before, during, or after pregnancy?
Well, so that's really where we've run into some challenges, is how do we message the risk of unknown, if there is risk at all? And that's where I like to really go back to basic science. There is no science or biology to suggest that the vaccine should be harmful to a developing fetus, nor is there any evidence or science to suggest that it would cause infertility, which are the two things my patients are talking to me the most about. I am comfortable reassuring them that just because there is not data, it does not mean that there's potential harm. And in fact, those studies looking for potential harm aren't going to be done because there's no evidence to think that there should be harm. And if there were, we couldn't actually do those studies. So waiting around to have studies and data that says, look, there's no harm in pregnancy, is really not going to benefit women who are pregnant or planning to become pregnant in the long run.
And so you mentioned the data, so then talk about the challenges and concerns about pregnant and nursing moms regarding their lack of inclusion in the initial trials.
So that's really where the problem stems from, is that there was a lack of inclusion of pregnant or nursing women in the original studies. And that's really where we run into challenges. If we don't include pregnant and nursing moms in clinical trials where there's no evidence in preclinical trials in animals to suggest harm, then we're ultimately doing them a real disservice. That's notably true in COVID-19, where we demonstrated almost a year ago now that there were maternal deaths due to COVID-19. And now we understand, based on our data and many others around the world, that pregnant women have a higher risk of becoming hospitalized, a higher risk of having adverse outcomes, including death. There is disproportionate risk to pregnant women if they contact COVID-19. So they're left with a known benefit if they get the vaccine, because it would prevent that harm that can occur and will occur at a higher rate, as great as 5 times the rate of non-pregnant women.
And with that in mind, we have seen that pregnant participants were recently added to the Pfizer trial. When can we expect to see data? And is there perhaps a chance that this could be something that would be encouraged or mandatory, much like the flu vaccine for pregnant women?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the trial proposes to enroll 4,000 pregnant women between 24 weeks of pregnancy and 34 weeks of pregnancy, and follow them up for 7 to 10 months, depending upon whether they got the placebo or they got the actual vaccine. For those women who receive the placebo, at the time the baby delivers, they will then be given the active vaccine. They will be unmasked. So in order for us to have that data, it's going to be a minimum of 7 to 10 months. But I want to put out a note. The goal of this study is not to show women that it's safe to get the vaccine. The goal of this study is to show what we call non-inferiority, which means it's just as good of efficacy when you compare pregnant to non-pregnant women. They're looking for the demonstration of expected equivalent benefit by getting the vaccine.
And certainly a very important distinction there. Just quickly, what do we know about the vaccine's impact on nursing mothers and what's being potentially passed on to babies?
So that's where there's really good news, And so we're looking early on and saying, yes, we know that those beneficial antibodies can be transferred to babies, certainly in nursing moms who've had COVID-19, and early evidence suggests in women who incidentally or chose to get the vaccine as well. That is great news because it's preparing this baby to help bridge them from the time when they're protected inside the womb until their immune systems are fully capable. So transferring those antibodies, if you get vaccinated during pregnancy, or transferring those antibodies with nursing, really is what is preparing that baby to live in this world of COVID that we're all trying to find a place of comfort in.
Well, certainly that last answer hopefully provided some comfort to people as well. Thank you for all your insights, Dr. Kjersti Aagaard there, maternal-fetal medicine specialist at Texas Children's Pavilion for Women in Houston, Texas.
Thank you.